for what it's worth, I've gone on for years about the importance of thinking about the long term in relation to the environmental damage, the climate change, everything else.
King Charles, now facing the twilight of his reign, has made a final, heartfelt wish that has left Prince William visibly shaken and in tears. After a lifetime of royal duty, tradition, and silent sacrifice, the monarch's emotional request is now echoing through the palace walls. And it's not what anyone expected. Deeply personal and steeped in legacy, this final wish carries the weight of a father's love and a king's burden. So, what exactly did Charles ask for? And why did it move William so deeply? This royal revelation changes everything we thought we knew. A king's journey, duty, and devotion. On the evening of September 8, 2022, a seismic shift rippled across the world. The death of Queen Elizabeth II marked the end of a reign that had shaped modern British identity. Her son, Charles, inherited the throne at the age of 73, the oldest person in British history to do so. He had waited over 59 years as heir, watching history unfold while quietly and patiently preparing for a role that had always seemed distant. Now the moment had arrived, and the crown rested upon a man shaped more by waiting than by ruling. Just a day after her passing, Charles delivered his first address as king. His words were calm but heavy with emotion, paying tribute to his mother's unwavering service. Yet he didn't dwell on the past. He looked forward, signaling change. In one heartfelt announcement, he named his son William, the new Prince of Wales, an early nod to the future of the monarchy. What followed was a historic moment broadcast live for the first time, the Accession Council. Against the grandeur of tradition stood modern transparency as millions watched Charles officially declared king. Flanked by Queen Camilla, Prince William, Prime Minister Liz Truss, and 6 former prime ministers, Charles took his place not just as monarch, but as a man on a mission to reshape the institution itself. Months of planning culminated on May 6, 2023, in a coronation ceremony at Westminster Abbey. Simpler than the one his mother had in 1953, but no less symbolic. Dubbed Operation Golden Orb, the event balanced ancient rituals with a vision of modern Britain. Charles took the oath, was anointed with oil, and received the regalia, all while projecting a quiet dignity rooted in experience. That July, in Edinburgh, he was presented with the honours of Scotland in a ceremony that added a distinctly national touch to his reign. From the beginning, Charles signaled that his monarchy would be different. In July 2023, he suggested that profits from Britain's offshore wind farms be directed towards public services, not royal coffers. As a result, the royal share of Crown estate profits dropped to 12%. It was a symbolic gesture, but one that resonated with a public weary of excess. Charles also stepped confidently onto the world stage. In November 2022, he welcomed South African President Cyril Ramaphosa for the first official state visit of his reign. Then came historic speeches to Germany's Bundestag and France's Senate, followed by a delicate visit to Kenya, where he confronted Britain's colonial past, not with excuses, but with empathy. His words stopped short of an apology, but acknowledged the pain left behind. Despite personal health challenges in 2024, Charles pressed on. A Commonwealth tour in Australia and Samoa was cut short, but not cancelled. He even paused treatment to fulfill his duties. In April 2025, he and Camilla marked their 20th wedding anniversary with a visit to Pope Francis, just days before the Pope's passing. Their meeting, brief but emotional, carried a weight no crown could lighten. Now, in May 2025, King Charles prepares to open Canada's Parliament, the first monarch to do so in person since 1977. His reign, though still new, has already been shaped by bold decisions, quiet strength, and a sense of purpose. Behind the title, behind the ceremonies, is a man walking a path he waited a lifetime to tread, determined to leave it better than he found it. But what really happened behind palace doors between Charles and William? Something that could change everything we thought we knew. Stay tuned. The unspoken distance between crown and heart. Yet, while the public watched the pageantry unfold and the world mourned the loss of Queen Elizabeth, behind closed doors, a far more intimate reckoning was quietly taking place between King Charles and his eldest son, William. William's childhood within palace walls may have seemed charmed from the outside, but it was anything but peaceful. He grew up caught in the shadow of a crumbling marriage, forced to watch as his mother, Princess Diana, so adored by the world, fought an invisible war of heartbreak. Behind her radiant smile was a woman deeply wounded, and young William could see it, especially whenever Camilla's name entered the room. To him, Camilla wasn't simply a figure in his father's life, she was a presence tied to his mother's pain. Even as he matured and wore the face of royal composure, that emotional imprint remained etched within. Their family, once close-knit in private moments of garden walks and bedtime stories, slowly began to fracture. Charles, raised in a time when emotions were to be tucked away beneath the crown, rarely spoke of what he truly felt. William, shaped by his mother's warmth and vulnerability, longed for open-hearted connection. The two men, though bound by blood and legacy, often found themselves lost in a silent gap neither knew quite how to bridge. The night of August 31st, 1997, would deepen that chasm. At just 15, William's world shattered with the death of his mother in a car crash in Paris. In the days that followed, it was not the monarchy or protocol that comforted him, but an unexpected gesture from his father. Charles flew to Paris to bring Diana's body home, quietly setting aside duty to be a grieving man first, a father above all. It was a rare wordless moment of solidarity between them, one that spoke louder than any royal address. In the years that followed, Charles tried to be more present. He made time where there was none, invited his sons on country walks, lingered longer in conversations. Still, the emotional distance lingered. Wounds too deep, shaped by too many years of unspoken grief and royal obligation. William, growing into his own role as a father, began to understand his father better. The struggle of raising children under public scrutiny, of being a symbol before being a man. It all became clearer. Gradually, what once divided them began to soften, not through grand gestures but in quiet understandings. Charles started to reflect not just on his reign, but on what legacy truly meant, not in the weight of a crown, but in the strength of a bond that had endured silence, resentment, and time. The pain didn't disappear, but it no longer ruled them. In private, beyond the fanfare and photo ops, they were simply Charles and William, a father and son, learning, healing, and rediscovering their place in each other's lives. Still, King Charles rules over Britain, and his reign could become one of the shortest in British history. Why? After a lifetime of preparation for the crown, what could bring it to an early end? Let's take a closer look. King Charles's health battle. But behind the palace gates, another story was unfolding, one marked not by grandeur, but by silent endurance and private heartache. In the early days of 2024, King Charles III was quietly admitted to the London clinic for what appeared to be a routine treatment for an enlarged prostate. The public, reassured by his calm demeanor, expected his return to duties within days. But then came a discovery no one was prepared for. Doctors had found a separate, more serious form of cancer, unrelated to his initial condition. The diagnosis rattled Buckingham Palace and cast a shadow over a monarchy still finding its footing after the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. Charles, then 75, had waited longer than any heir in British history to wear the crown. And now, barely into his reign, he found himself battling a disease that demanded as much strength as any war for power ever had. Despite medical advice urging rest, the king remained defiant in his dedication. He insisted on reviewing state documents, attending to government affairs, and holding meetings with ambassadors and ministers, even on days when the effects of treatment left him visibly worn. Those close to him recalled moments when he appeared pale and exhausted, yet still showed up to host diplomatic gatherings with a composed expression that masked his physical struggle. As the king quietly waged his battle, the royal family was forced to shift. Queen Camilla, once dismissed by critics, rose steadily into prominence. She rearranged her personal schedule to accompany the king during his hospital stays and stepped in publicly to carry the weight of royal engagements. Her attendance at the Commonwealth Day service and the Royal Maundy ceremony that spring wasn't just symbolic, it was a sign of her growing role as the monarchy's anchor during turbulent times. What once was skepticism about her place at Charles's side began to shift into respect. But the king's health wasn't the only royal concern. Only weeks after his diagnosis was made public, the Princess of Wales, Catherine, revealed that she too had been diagnosed with cancer. The revelation stunned the nation. To many, Catherine was a source of quiet stability, modern, graceful, and dedicated to her young children. Her sudden retreat from public life left a noticeable void in the royal presence, and her absence amplified the weight placed on others. Princess Anne, long regarded as the hardest-working royal, took on even more engagements, traveling across the country and representing the crown with her signature discipline. Meanwhile, Prince William bore a heavy dual burden, supporting his wife through treatment while stepping deeper into the responsibilities expected of a future king. Insiders hinted at his visible exhaustion, caught between his public obligations and private worry. Still, there were flickers of hope. By April 2024, King Charles began to slowly resume some of his official appearances. His attendance at Easter service in Windsor was met with relief and admiration. He smiled, waved, and stood tall, even if the toll of treatment lingered behind his eyes. But recovery proved to be a winding road. In March 2025, a brief setback forced him to return to the hospital, leading to a few postponed events. Yet again, the monarch refused to let his illness define him. Privately, he spoke of the crown's future with those closest to him, not with fear, but with clarity. He understood the weight it carried, especially now. While the public saw a poised king within palace walls, Charles confided in Camilla about what the monarchy would need to survive the next storm. In the end, King Charles's greatest act of leadership may not have been one of grand ceremony, but of resilience. His quiet courage, the unwavering support of his family, and the collective strength they displayed offered a rare glimpse into the humanity behind the monarchy. And for a nation so often captivated by its royal traditions, it was this vulnerability that made them feel more real than ever. Prince William steps forward. As King Charles quietly faced his toughest battle yet, a different kind of transformation was happening in plain sight, one that signaled the monarchy's inevitable future. With the king often retreating from public life due to his illness, Prince William quietly stepped into the growing silence, not with grand declarations, but with measured, purposeful actions. Though he was still officially the heir, those closest to the palace began to speak of him as a leader already in motion. Behind closed doors, William was entrusted with decisions that had long been the king's alone. His presence at major state functions became more consistent, his voice more confident in private briefings with political figures, and his posture unmistakably that of someone preparing for far more than just ceremonial duties. Insiders noted how naturally he balanced centuries of royal tradition with the pressures of a rapidly changing world. From hosting key dignitaries to spearheading charitable initiatives, William's grip on the monarchy's day-to-day presence grew stronger. But it wasn't just protocol and formality that shaped his rise. It was his calm way of listening to ordinary people, walking among them, and adapting his message to reflect their hopes. His connection to the public became a quiet force, helping the monarchy remain relevant during uncertain times. Even in private family matters, William's role expanded. Alongside Catherine, who was dealing with her own health challenges, he worked to maintain a stable and comforting image for both the royal household and the nation. Their united front, their choice to shield their children from relentless media glare, and their steady engagement inspired trust in what lay ahead. Though King Charles remained on the throne, the burden of leadership had unmistakably begun to shift, and Prince William, with quiet strength, was already carrying it. A father's quiet legacy. And just as Prince William's public role grew heavier, there was a quieter moment, far from the cameras and official seals, that may have changed everything. In early 2024, inside a softly lit room in Clarence House, the future king sat down not with a monarch, but with a father who had something far more important to pass down than a crown. The moment wasn't scripted or ceremonial. No aides stood nearby. No press hovered outside. It was simply Charles and William, two men bound not just by blood and duty, but by a complex history of love, mistakes, and unspoken wishes. The tone was calm, intimate. Charles didn't wear his usual air of royalty. Instead, he looked older, gentler, like a man who had reached the edge of something profound. When William took his seat, Charles reached for his hand, just as he used to when his son was a boy afraid of thunderstorms. It was a small gesture, but it held the weight of decades. What followed wasn't a lecture on statecraft or protocol. Charles spoke like a father who had spent years carrying a quiet regret. He told stories, simple ones, about William's childhood, about scraped knees and bedtime suits, about pride and love buried beneath the demands of his title. But then, his voice shifted. There was no royal command, no grand advice, just a wish. Charles asked William not to make the same mistake he had made, putting duty above joy, tradition above family. He spoke of missed dinners, unspoken apologies, and the burden of always doing what was expected. He urged William to lead, yes, but to lead with heart, to hug his children more than he signed decrees, to speak with his brother Harry when the time was right, to let love, not obligation, guide his steps. William listened, his eyes rimmed with the kind of tears that don't fall easily, and in that moment, something settled deep within him. He had always prepared for the throne, but now, for the first time, he understood the soul of kingship, not crowns or portraits, but moments like this, honest, human, and unrepeatable. He walked out of that room changed, not burdened by his father's legacy, but lifted by it. Whether or not the world sees it, the most powerful inheritance William ever received didn't come with a coronation. It came quietly, from a father's trembling hand, and a final, loving wish. To understand the weight of that moment, we have to go back to the quiet exchange that changed everything. The final wish that changed Prince William forever. It wasn't meant to be anything remarkable. Prince William had shared countless private moments with his father, conversations shaded by duty and tradition, but this time felt different. Even before King Charles spoke, William sensed it. The air was heavier, the silence more deliberate. What followed wasn't a royal command, but a father's final wish, expressed not as a monarch, but as a man attempting to pass on something far deeper than a crown. Charles didn't speak of titles or duty. He spoke of love. He urged William not just to lead with wisdom, but with warmth, to wear the crown with compassion, and to keep his family close even as the world observed. There was no throne in that room, no golden scepter, only a father and son, seated in quiet understanding. For William, the moment opened something within. It wasn't just about becoming king. It was about becoming the kind of father and man his own father had quietly taught him to be. The tears came slowly at first, then without restraint. Charles's words had stirred memories, long walks after Diana's passing, quiet talks about life, and moments of reassurance when the world grew too loud. William didn't see a monarch before him. He saw the man who kept their family together through storms, who absorbed pain silently and led with steadiness when grief threatened to shatter them. The story of Charles's final wish didn't remain between them for long. It began as a whisper among the palace staff, those who had served through decades of change. They had witnessed state events, royal births, historic decisions, but never something this personal. Even Queen Camilla, always Charles's unwavering support, understood that what transpired wasn't about power or legacy. It was about preserving love in a realm often governed by protocol. Farther away, Prince Harry heard of his father's heartfelt message. The two had grown distant, but the sentiment still reached him. It stirred old memories of laughter, closeness, and family before division. Princess Anne and Prince Edward, ever loyal to Charles, quietly reflected on the moment as well. They had seen their brother shoulder the weight of responsibility throughout his life. Now, they witnessed him choosing to pass on not merely a role, but a way of being. For William, everything shifted. He had spent years preparing for kingship, studying, training, observing, but nothing had equipped him for this kind of leadership, one that required tenderness alongside strength, and honesty instead of formality. Since that day, something within him has changed. When he includes Prince George at football finals or leans in close to his daughter during events, it's not ceremony, it's intention, it's memory, it's love. Charles didn't ask his son to be flawless. He asked him to be genuine, and William accepted, not just with words, but with quiet actions that speak to a new kind of monarchy, one that's rooted in connection rather than distance, in emotion rather than obligation. The world may be watching, but more importantly, so are his children. And for William, that's what truly gives the crown its meaning. Now, the question remains, not just within the palace, but far beyond. Will William lead as his father once hoped? Stay with us till the end. Prince William's silent mission to uplift a nation. That moment of heartbreak had left an imprint on his soul. But rather than seeking sympathy or attention, Prince William turned grief into quiet purpose. While the world often viewed him through the lens of royalty and tradition, William steadily reshaped what it meant to be a modern heir, not through grandeur, but through deep compassion and deliberate action. Those close to him say he never sought headlines, only change. As a child, he showed an unusual sensitivity toward homelessness. It wasn't just a cause to support from afar. He stepped into shelters, joined outreach workers during night shifts, and formed lasting bonds with those living on the streets. His work with Centerpoint became personal. He served meals, listened to stories, and returned again and again, long after the cameras were gone. Mental health soon became another focus, one rooted in his own life experiences and a growing awareness of how many suffer in silence. Alongside Catherine, William helped launch Heads Together, an initiative that encouraged open conversations around anxiety, depression, and emotional well-being. Their message was clear: seeking help wasn't weakness, it was courage. The campaign provided free training for frontline workers, tools for schools, and tailored resources for young people. William's fingerprints were on every part, not as a figurehead, but as someone deeply involved. Yet his efforts extended far beyond human struggles. William's deep love for nature and wildlife began in childhood and shaped his boldest environmental step, the launch of the Earthshot Prize in 2020. Designed to spotlight and fund groundbreaking solutions for the planet's biggest problems, the prize tackled everything from marine conservation to sustainable farming. William believed in the power of innovation, not just for today, but for future generations. As president of United for Wildlife, he took on criminal networks driving the illegal trade in endangered species. He brought together banks, tech firms, and law enforcement in an unusual but effective alliance, proving that wildlife protection is also about security, justice, and community. And whether visiting wounded veterans, sick children, or struggling schools, William always returned quietly. He remembered names, asked meaningful questions, and often stayed in touch. Those around him noticed. He wasn't there for a photo. He was there to listen, to help, to care. As King Charles's final wish lingers, the question isn't whether William will fulfill it. He already is, by leading not with pomp or power, but with purpose. But what do you think? drives Prince William to quietly reshape the monarchy without seeking the spotlight? Could it be grief, duty, or something deeper? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.